to Adventures in History. It's that time again where we talk about old stuff and I try to make it fun. We'll see if it happens. Welcome in, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. It's been an interesting one for me. Say hey to everybody. Matt, hello. Ogie, welcome in. Late Bloomer, welcome, welcome. Diviner, hello, hello. Cliff, what's up? Good to see you. Hey, everybody. So my wife is visiting with family down in Florida today. So I have been basically on, well, you could say that I'm having a bachelor day, but in reality what I'm doing is acting as 24-hour puppy emotional support because the dog is absolutely pair bonded with my wife in a way that I will never be able to replicate. I can only hope to be some sort of pale imitation of the relationship. And as soon as my wife left this morning, the dog has become ridiculously attached and being very emotionally demanding and wanting constant cuddles and wants to go to sleep on me and doesn't want me to be out of her line of vision. You know, all of that fun stuff because the dog has emotional attachment that's very, very strong to my wife. But my wife's having a good time. She's spending some time down on the beach. She's a big fan of the beach. My wife is. I am not so much. As you might tell just by looking at me, I burn pretty easily. It is it's not a fun thing for me either. I burn and then I go like super beet red and I lose huge portions of skin through peeling and then I go right back to this pale. So I don't really have a tanning reflex, if you will. All right, let me see if this works. So if you wanted to, how do I turn this? Oh, I need to do this. Let's spit it out some more. We can have like I guess a dedicated dedicated puppy cam stream. I'm so bad at positioning this camera. Oh, I guess because it's upside down, huh? She's just hanging out. Missing the human. But being a good puppy. She constantly chews her feet. I don't really know why, and we haven't been able to figure it out. We give her antihistamines and anti-allergy stuff, and she'll still chew her feet the whole time. We trimmed the little fur between her foot pads, and we put stuff like on her little puppy foot pads. It's stuff like it's like, you know, lip balm, but it's for puppy feet, and she'll still chew her feet. So we have no idea why she just likes to chew her feet. So yeah, I trim the nail. I have to do all of the nail trimming because it is an ordeal. The dog does not like the nails to be trimmed, so you have to like flip her upside down and like tuck her leg under your arm like this, and then kind of clip them. It's a whole thing, but yeah, we trim her nails. So the dog is pampered. Don't worry about the dog being taken care of. she has a better life than some people on Earth, and I'm not even being sarcastic about that. Our topic tonight is the Renaissance. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how the Renaissance got started, because this is something that a lot of people kind of, I don't know, they just gloss over it in classes. You get this story, it's like, and then they decided that learning was important. And like, okay. They don't like getting their feet touched. Got to get them used to their feet being touched when they were babies. Yeah, so we've had her since she was about a month old, or so. We don't actually know exactly how old she was, because she was a found in a parking lot puppy. So we don't know exactly what happened to her, or from where she came, or the circumstances that affected her prior to us taking her in. But there's always the concern that something that happened during that period of time has given her some level of separation anxiety as well. So, who knows what's going on there. Some historians do not acknowledge the Renaissance as a time period because it doesn't have a clear definition. Yeah, that's fair too. There's not necessarily a definite start point and a definite end point. But it's a movement, right? And we'll talk about this when we get kind of wound up here. Just want to make sure that everybody had a little bit of time to kind of come in. I know that sometimes I'll start stream and then it takes a few minutes for everybody to sort of go, hey, look, Shane's streaming. So I was going to try to do a lot of pictures that I've taken today, because I've been to Italy a couple of times. So I was going to try to share a lot of those pictures of places and things that I've seen. I don't know. I guess just sort of as a excuse to wear the adventure hat. I don't know. I didn't sleep a lot last night. I am very, very low energy right now. Just don't feel like I've got a lot of energy. He doesn't speak very well. I don't know. Some people say he should sleep more. I should say that he should sleep more. With people, I hear people talking about him not sleeping enough. So, anyway, my wife had to get up early this morning, and it was about like 3 hours before I would normally wake up. Yeah, I've had more coffee than I've needed already today, and got myself jittery by about 1 o'clock this afternoon. So, I'm sort of like off the coffee for the moment, and I've been chugging big glasses of water. Right, so that's the plan. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and get started then. So, how did the Renaissance happen, and where did it start, and what's going on, and when did this whole thing get kicked off? So this is a good question. It's actually a really important question, because if you want to know what it is, it's important to know from where it came. Because if you don't know what we were prior to it, you don't really understand the impact of it. And if we're looking at Western Europe prior to the Renaissance, what we are looking at is half of a continent that is, thank you, Claire, for the bits. I don't know why my alerts aren't going off once again. Streamlabs has failed me. I'm getting really frustrated with Streamlabs. About half of my alerts are simply not alerting at all, and that's it's very frustrating. So yeah, so apparently my my bits. Anyway, I'm gonna have to just spend a whole day with this, and I don't really feel like doing it right now. It has apparently deleted my bits notification, which makes me very upset. Hola, Claudio. ¿Qué pasa, mi amigo? No dormí mucho anoche. Estoy muy cansado ahora. Anyway, what was the medieval period? A lot of people call this the Dark Ages. This is not accurate. There was still stuff going on in the medieval period. We've talked about this a lot on stream, and you can go back and watch all of the VODs that are available for that time period. So the Dark Ages is a bad name, and we shouldn't really use the Dark Ages anymore. We could talk about the medieval period, which is a better topic, better name for this movement that happened basically between the end of the fall of the Roman Empire in the West and the beginning of the Renaissance. So like 500s through about the 1200s or so, depending on what we're talking about. It's not fair to say that there wasn't anything going on. There's actually a lot of stuff going on, and they had art, and they had literature, and they had buildings, and they had countries and things like that. But the common sort of concept is that the Dark Ages was just everybody was dumb. There wasn't really any culture. Nothing really happened. Everything was horrible. And that's not really true. We really give the Dark Ages way too much grief a lot of the time. I watched Saving Private Ryan today, which is, I guess, about as close to commemorating D-Day as I usually get. We've already talked about coffee. I've had more than I needed already today. Dark Ages allegedly means a period when nothing got written down by dominant folk in most of Europe. See, that's the thing, but that's not what happened. We have plenty of histories from that time period. We have sermons from that time period. We have music from that time period. We have art from that time period. The thing is that the art looks a lot like this, though. And this is an icon. I don't even know who the guy is. I believe it's supposed to be Saint Dominic, but I'm not certain. But this is an icon that was presented to a pope during the medieval period around the year 1000 or so. So if you're going to give something to the pope, you want to give him something that's going to wow him. And if you go to the Vatican today, you can see this. It's in a big hall that's full of gifts that were given to the papacy or to the church. So this was worthy as a gift to the Pope. And we look at this and go, man, this looks like some kid's, 8th grade art project. Right? This isn't good art, but this was like art that you gave to the Pope. I mean, they still had art. It wasn't like nothing was happening during the medieval period. It was just not fancy stuff. There was a lot of stagnation that came out of a few different locations and a few different justifications. One big one was the breakdown of centralized learning systems. If you go back to the Roman Empire, you had a lot of learning, a lot of writing, and that was passed down, and their literacy rates are fairly high. And if we look at the kingdoms that took the place of the Roman Empire in the West, they're mostly barbarian peoples that didn't have written languages, that couldn't read. So that's obviously going to make it harder for those people to convey their own histories and to have a lot of education. And literacy rates dropped pretty heavily. It's not like everybody could read during the medieval period, but, there's still stuff going on where some people know things and some people are reading things. It's just way lower than it was. Architecturally speaking, we lose a lot of centralized authority. If you're going to build some big fancy thing like some big Roman aqueduct or a huge church or some sort of really big Colosseum, you've got to have a lot of people that are going to work to help you build that stuff. and we take down an empire and we replace it with about a dozen smaller kingdoms that are going to unify and grow bigger over time, but they're not going to be able to usher the same sort of manpower towards architectural endeavors. And when you can't build that stuff, then you lose the knowledge of how to build that stuff, right? So you start seeing the disappearance of things like arches and domes. And by the time we pass about the year 600 or so, you're not really going to see anything with a dome built in Western Europe for about the next 5 or maybe 600 years, because they just lose the knowledge of the technology. The Catholic Church in the West becomes dominant, and because the Catholic Church was the sort of one thing that had impact over the entire continent, everybody started worrying a lot about the church, right? And, religion in dark times is a comfort to many people. But when the Western Roman Empire fell, the central authority fell with it. And the church became the new central authority that everybody had to answer to. So if everybody's got to answer to the Pope, the afterlife becomes a big deal, right? And everybody wants to make sure that they're going to heaven. And the only way to do that is to make sure that the Pope is happy with you. And a lot of the stuff that comes out of that as a cultural or a societal reaction is that a lot of things that aren't church-like end up getting dropped by the wayside. If you're writing during the medieval period, there's a good chance you're writing about stuff that has religious connotation. If you are making music during the medieval period, there's a good chance that you're writing music for religious purposes. If you're going to study, a lot of the places that are going to go do studying are, places that are like monasteries. They're going to have the biggest collection of books, and churches are going to be places where people can read and learn how to read. So you end up with this focus on religious ideology as the central facet of life and culture, and that's not necessarily bad, but that does stifle other things, right? Like explorations of the sciences, or pushing philosophy, or exploring ideas that are outside of religious nature, right? There was philosophy that was going on during the medieval period, but it's stuff like Thomas Aquinas, who, wrote a lot of philosophy, but it's religious philosophy. And if you remove religion from Aquinas's writings, the entire structure collapses upon itself. His entire philosophical justification of the universe is based around religion as a central tenet. So you have this kind of, not necessarily stagnation, it's sort of a bad word, but this sort of hyper-focus on creativity, but only through the lens of the church and what the church wants. And you don't want those people getting crazy, so you don't want them writing a lot of bawdy plays where people are, having sex and drinking a lot and getting drunk. You want them to write stuff that is going to reinforce morality. You're going to want people to not write sonnets about how much they adore their lovers' bodies. You're going to want them to write poems about how much they adore the body of Christ. And I'm not talking about it in a sexual way here. I'm talking about their connection with Jesus through things like the Eucharist, right? So this is what happens during a lot of the medieval period. You get your entire creative outlet that has to sort of go through the church. Right, the Roman Church does not like the dirty jokes. So you can have a really vibrant culture with art and architecture and music and stuff like that, but it's not going to be the same because there are these external limits that have been put on things by the fact that the church was the center of everything. You're also going to end up with a lack of trade, partially because of things like xenophobia. It was really, really bad to go trade with those Muslim people, right? You're not supposed to be friends with all those people that don't agree with us ideologically. So you're going to get trade goods that come out of Asia, but you're not going to see people that are necessarily going over to Asia and exploring that region. You're not going to see a lot of people that are moving their families to the East or to Africa to establish better trade heads or stuff like that. You gotta have contact with these people in the docks only. This is why the docks become places of shenanigans and bad thoughts. You don't go down to the docks. That's where all the bad people are. Because you might have a Muslim ship that's pulling in from somewhere like Egypt that's going to trade with one of these big cities in Western Europe. I'm quite entertained. Are you not entertained? Stephen, Jerry, and Art, thanks so much for rating in. Hey, everybody from Stephen's channel. I was just over there. It's my friend Stephen. Look, it's my friend. Stephen and I are friends. Officially. We've made it official. There are multiple emails now that back up our friendship. What's up, man? Hey, everybody from Steve's chat. I'm sure you probably know who I am because I hang around Steve's chat so much. But if you don't, my name is Shane. I teach history and sociology at college, and on stream here, you can usually find me running my mouth about historical stuff. For everybody that was hanging out with me, if you aren't following Stephen, Jerry, and Art, you really should, because he's a great artist and a cool guy and likes history and likes talking about stuff and is educated and has an amazing artistic talent that is usually expressed through doing things like dragons and landscapes, both of things that the medieval church would probably not have been very excited about, but that the Renaissance people were super excited about. My friendship is on the grid. Frank, aloha, my friend. It is. It's on. We have paperwork now. Eva, what's up, man? There's a South Park episode where Cartman changed known love songs to Jesus. I've seen some clips of that one where he was making like pop songs, but they were like, was it a boy band? Did they make a boy band? I think that's it. And Steve is one of the people that likes Tolkien like I do. So he's down with the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien stuff like I am. So if you want to talk Tolkien, there's another place for you to go hang out. Save that praise for the Gen Con booth. Yeah, I hear you. Putsy, what's up, man? He was trying to prove he could go platinum and Christian rock wouldn't get platinum, so all his success was for naught. Interesting. There have been a couple of Christian rock albums that have gone platinum. The self-titled album of Jars of Clay, their first album went platinum. DC Talk's album Jesus Freak went platinum. There have been several. I know weird stuff, by the way. I have a giant brain full of pointless and stupid trivia that sometimes just stumbles out at the appropriate moment. So, Also, Putsy, that's an epic beard, dude. You have my admiration for dealing with that thing. I need to shave now. Like this, I don't even know if you can tell that I've got a little bit of a shadow. That's too much. I don't like hair on the sides of my face. So maybe it was gold as a record type that when that episode was unattainable. That's cool, right? The main rock station where I grew up was run the College Brown. They sold the station to a Christian rock band. Nice. You'll never forgive them, alas. There was the episode of Simpsons where they went to church on Easter and Bart changed the sheet music to Inagata Davida and everybody in the congregation recognized the song. Moose, that's great. See, I don't watch any of these shows, so all of the little happenings are usually pretty interesting. I'm going to occasionally just reach down and give the puppy beside me some emotional support via pats and or maybe scratches. Just because my wife is away and the puppy is having a lot of separation anxiety right now. So if I can tell that the puppy is getting a little nervous, I might switch over and just do a little bit of puppy cam. This is Kaylee, by the way. Her name is Kaylee. And she's a sweet puppy. She's a really good dog. I don't really care very much for inside pets, but she's a good puppy. Yes, you're a good puppy. Oh, thank you for the sugars. She's very generous with the puppy sugars. So We're talking about where the Renaissance came from, the origin of the Renaissance. Mostly because I think that when you get this lesson in history, it ends up sort of just coming after the medieval period. So it's like, hey, we did feudalism and we broke up all of the land into chunks and there were knights. And then everybody started doing art again. And I don't like that rough transition because that glosses over a lot of the really cool things that happened. So we're actually trying to walk through what happened as the world changed from the medieval period to the Renaissance. And we're not actually going to get very far into the Renaissance tonight. We're really just looking at how it started and some of the atmosphere that was around it and why it was actually a really big deal, because it really did dramatically change the way that people started doing stuff. So, we have this Western European continent that's not necessarily stuck, and the Dark Ages is a bad idea. But they're definitely not as advanced culturally, scientifically, historically, economically as the stuff in the other part of the Mediterranean, right? If we're looking over here at the eastern part of the Mediterranean, this part of the world is still going really, really strong, and there's a lot of learning going on over here. During the Abbasid period of the Islamic world, like the golden age of the Abbasids is right around the year 1000 or so. Baghdad University over here in modern day Iraq is the best university on the face of the earth. It's where you can go to learn the most knowledge. They're advancing mathematics, they're doing philosophical stuff, and they're actually preserving a lot of the Greek and Roman classics. They still have a lot of that stuff that they've translated into Arabic, or that Arabic scholars have actually learned Greek and Latin to read in the original language. So if you look at this part of the world, we have the Byzantine Empire, and they're still going fairly strong for a portion of this period of time. They start declining in the face of several problems, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the relationship between the East and the West is really strained. We talked about this back, I guess, probably 10 to 20 streams ago. We talked about the Great Schism that happened in the early 1000s, where the Catholic Church of Western Europe separated officially from the Eastern Orthodox Christian churches that were based in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. But when you break religious ties with the West, that's also going to make it really hard to get anything else done between the East and the West, because religion was, again, a central concept of the West. So the only content or contact that you're really going to have between Eastern and Western powers ends up being things like commercial stuff. We're buying and selling things to each other. That, of course, is going to change during the Crusades. But the Crusades actually have a big part of the Renaissance to play, and people don't necessarily always connect these things. But if you are a Western European guy from, say, I don't know, northern France, let's say you're from Normandy, right? You were 2 or 3 generations separated from the Vikings that conquered the northern part of France. Well, there were a lot of Normans that ended up going on crusades. So you get over to the eastern part of the Mediterranean. I'm going to show you some pictures that I took. So I'll once again put on my adventure hat and maybe throw some of these in the chat. So this is the adventure hat. It's been with me on 3 continents and now 10 countries, after adding Belize and Guatemala to the list. I wear this when I show you pictures of things that I've seen. So you're a Norman and you go to Constantinople on the Crusade and you see this thing. This is Hagia Sophia. Now, obviously, at that time, these minarets were not built on Hagia Sophia because it was still a church. But this gigantic church, this was at the time the largest enclosed man-made structure on the face of the earth. And you walk up to that and you go, holy crap, man, what is that? And they go, oh, it's a church. And you go, what do you mean it's a church? Because you're used to seeing churches that are made out of wood because you're from Normandy. And they go, oh, no, man, that's just a church. And it's pretty cool, but we go there every Sunday, so it's kind of normal. And you're like, no, that's not normal. And then you go, well, how did you guys build that? They're like, oh man, we built that like 1,000 years ago. And people, it wasn't 1,000 years ago. This was built in the 500s. So, it was easily built 500 years before the Crusades. And at that point, if you're a Norman, 500 years before the Normans, your ancestors were living in wooden shacks in Scandinavia, right? You didn't see a building this size. You could put every stone building you had probably ever seen in the sanctuary of Hagia Sophia, right? This is just an enormous building. I think I've got another picture here. Yeah. So this is another photograph of Hagia Sophia. This is from the roof of my hotel the last time that I was there. But look at how just freaking enormous this building is, right? It's just absolutely gigantic. I believe churches were breaking apart. Yeah. They were moving apart from each other, Diviner, but there was an actual moment where they excommunicated each other and formally broke ties, and it's referred to as the Great Schism. We covered this in a stream, but I believe it was before you started following. Welcome in, Dame Karen. Good to see you. Isn't that the one that all the fuss is about? It's a church. It was a church originally. It was built under the Emperor Justinian. Then it was a mosque. Yes, it was turned into a mosque in the 1400s, 1453, after it was conquered by the Muslims. Then it turned into a museum. It did in the early 1900s. And now it's back to a mosque. Yes, Erdogan, Tayyip Erdogan, the guy that runs Turkey, reopened Hagia Sophia as a mosque a couple of years ago. So now it's much more difficult to get in and see it. I was rather lucky to explore it the first time that I went, which was in 2015. When I went back in 2022, it was basically closed for regular visitation stuff. But look how big this building is. It's just absolutely enormous. Just crazy, crazy big. Absolutely huge. Oh yeah, it's. I don't think that anybody is ever going. Well, I shouldn't say that because people are stupid. The modern Turks that run Turkey, they don't want to break the building down. They don't want to break this down. And again, the minarets here, the towers that are around it, are additions that have been made after the fact to turn the church into a mosque, because mosques have to have minarets. And this is one of the very few big mosques that has 4 minarets. That your mosque sizes and importances can be judged by the number of minarets. Do you watch the show Expedition Unknown? I don't watch the show Expedition Unknown. I'm not sure what channel that is on or what it's about. But you're welcome to tell me what it is. And maybe I've seen like clips or a couple of episodes or something like that. Oh, I forgot to show this. All right, Steve. Thanks again for the raid, man. Take it easy. Hope you get some good food. Shane doesn't watch shows. I don't really watch a lot of. I watch TV, but I'll watch like dramas or anime or something like that. I don't watch a lot of like history shows, which seems kind of weird because he's a history guy. But I don't know. It's like if you do history all day, do you really just want to do history when you get home? Another thing you see if you show up in Constantinople or things like this, these are the Theodosian walls. These are the gigantic walls that would have protected and did protect Constantinople. All the way through. And dadgummit, I want to move the photo. That's all I want to do. Thank you. You can see how far these things go, like all the way down there. And then all the way across. And yeah, just these huge walls. Again, so as a Norman, you're like, no, I don't see this stuff. What the devil? What's going on with all of this? So there's just a lot of stuff that's blowing these Crusaders' minds. And then they get back to Western Europe and they go, hey man, you're never going to believe this. Those people over there in the east, they've got this building. You could put like our entire church in the sanctuary and all of the buildings of our town in the sanctuary, and then you could still do church because it's that big. And people are like, dude, you're full of crap. There's no way that exists, right? You're just saying all these things. like, oh man, we saw these walls and they stretch all the way across the entire peninsula where the city is, and they run for like 6 miles, and you're like, yeah, no, I don't think that's a thing, right? Like you're not going to see any of that stuff. They're like, but for sure it's there, right? So you see all of this stuff, and you see how the people in the East live, and then you've got to go back to the West. And this, again, it just kind of opens people's eyes to what they had lost, right? So if you're off on crusade on the first through the fourth crusade, you're looking at, like 1098 through 1205 or 1206, depending on when you want to say that the fourth one was done. So about 100-ish years or so of people having these great encounters with stuff that they have never imagined before, never been able to see before, and they want that, right? They want that back. Hey, you gotta stop licking. You're driving me crazy with the licking. Stop the licking, okay? Thank you. Yes, I see you, but you're licking a hole in yourself. You gotta stop. Okay. You'd love it. It's on Discovery. Host is Josh Gates. He studied archaeology and travels the world solving mysteries. I don't think I would like that. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't like that. Yeah, I don't really spend a lot of time watching shows on Discovery Channel, and it's not like I'm glad that you love it. I really, really am. If you love things and it brings you joy and it doesn't hurt other people, do your thing. And I'm very happy that you found something that you like. It's just not really my thing. There are parts of things like that in Constantinople. You could still go to where the Hippodrome was. The big Colosseum in Rome is still there, but not everybody gets to go down to see Rome. That show, He's a Bit of a Tool. Interesting. Also, hey, Maddie, good to see you. And Colosseum is one of those words that's crazy hard to actually type. I hate trying to type that word because it feels like it needs way more E's and I's than it should actually. Anyway, so if we're not going to have direct control with the church, we go over and we build crusader states that for almost 110, 120 years are going to be Western territories in the medieval Holy Land, as it's referred to, and you're going to then open up more trade routes. So you're going to have direct contact between people that are Western European living in the Holy Land, and they're going to be sending things back to Europe. So people start understanding, like, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff that's in there that we don't have anymore. And you're going to start seeing the earliest portions of people doing things like bringing back texts. But you're also going to see the expansion of banking, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But the Crusades aren't just religious in nature. They are going to push cultural and economic exchange. And your trade goods are going to start showing up at cheaper prices, which means that they're more affordable, which means that more people take them and want them. And this is going to be then thwarted by the resurgence of Islamic power. And if we look at the collapse of the Crusader states and then the rise of the Ottomans, you're going to see Muslim powers begin to reexert their control over the Eastern Mediterranean and close back a lot of those ports and a lot of those opportunities for trade, which is going to dry up this sort of burgeoning market, and it's going to make people have to start coming up with different ideas, right? And this is an interesting and a very important point. If you are used to doing everything more or less the way that the church tells you, you don't have to think outside of the box, right? Because if the Pope is ultimately going to be able to tell you you must do this and you can't do that, you're just going to end up with a raid of a whole bunch of people coming in from Aristotle's channel. Aristotle, thanks so much for the raid, my friend. Welcome in. I'm pretty sure that most people in Aristotle's chat know me because I hang out over there quite a bit. But if you don't know who I am, hello, my name is Shane. I teach history and sociology. I've got several magic pieces of paper that I spent $60,000 on. Anyway, basically, like I read a lot and I know things. And we talk about stuff here on chat. When on my channel, we're just doing history stuff. And right now we're talking about the Renaissance and specifically where the Renaissance came from. We stalk each other. We do. The Scythians are raiding. What up, Handy? Good to see you. Welcome in. And thanks so much for all those gift subs last time and the donation, man. That was above and beyond the call, and I really do appreciate that. And I'm not saying that to make you do it again. I'm just saying that because I want you to remember that I know who you are, right? What's up, Inspector Diameter? Good to see you. Twister, how's it going? Is this the guy that Eris is saying that won't stop stalking him? Yeah. No, I don't stalk Eris except in the way that you would stalk somebody that you want to have a good conversation with, right? Like, if you've ever wanted to show up at somebody's house in the middle of the night with a rag full of chloroform and a dun 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 dun. Twister, thank you so much for the follow and welcome to the adventure. Show up at somebody's house in the middle of the night with a rag full of chloroform in an unmarked van, just to knock them out and drag them back to an unmarked building where you ask them really deep and insightful questions about Greek culture in the classical period. That's the kind of stalking that I want to do to Eris. That guy is he's a really smart friggin' guy, and he's a cool dude. And I wish that we were closer and could hang out more. Dear Eris, I'm totally not a stalker. I just want to pick your brain linguistically, romantically, and biologically. That sounds like some 80s romance movie logic. What's up, Santa? How's it going, man? Well, I said man. I don't know if you're a man or not. What's up, my friend? Good to see you. I'd like to trap Aristotle in the bathroom and talk to him through the door while he's pooping. What up, DCI Banks? And thank you, man, again for your extended and unwavering generosity. DCI Banks has done a lot to help me in my endeavors, and he's a good guy. You're just a sentient, shrunken head, man. I feel you. It's okay. Sometimes we all feel that way, right? Sometimes we all just feel like the important parts of us have been yanked out, and we've just been shrunken down by external forces and desiccated to the point where we really only serve the purpose of scaring other people. So, you know, I feel that sometimes, but you don't have to feel that way around here. We're all cool. I had a friend who benched 500 pounds in high school. He, no lie, did this to people in the locker room. Wow. It reminds me of Shorzy from the show Letterkenny and the spinoff show Shorzy. I don't know if you all have seen either of these. If you haven't, you should watch both of them because they're great. I needed to say hey to somebody, and I forgot to say hey to somebody. Who did I forget to say hey to? Oh, no, I said hey to DCI Banks. Viper, what's up, man? Why does everyone stipulate unmarked van? Who spells out kidnapper in vinyl lettering on their van? Somebody that's a really bad kidnapper, right? I mean, you don't want to... But you could also show up in something that's got, you know, like a 1980s scene of a metal, like, rocker van where there's, like, flames and the, you know, anthropomorphized death riding a horse and, you know, with a flaming guitar or some junk like that, right? Sometimes they have free candy scrawled on the side. This is true, right? The candy is what gets you. It could be a UPS van. What's up, Fergster? Good to see you. You never expected a UPS van because they don't show up when you expect them to. That's a bit of a bad joke. 80s rock musicians would never sexually assault someone. Wow. If only I could tell you stories about all of the times that happened. Mobile library. Dude, that would catch me. That would catch me a lot. It could say free tacos or free kittens, right? You got to find the right kidnapping balance. Too plain, too flamboyant, but remember. Yeah. So you gotta hit that like comfortable zone of not sticking out, but also very forgettable, right? You don't show up in the Scooby-Doo mystery machine. Yeah, this is a bad move. This is just a bad move. You don't want to do this. So far, to catch everybody up very briefly and as a bit of a rehash, we talked about Western Europe after the collapse of Rome and how a lot of people call it the Dark Ages and how that really wasn't a good term for it and how there's actually culture going on, but it's all culture that's basically being filtered through the Catholic Church. And we talked about the relationships between the eastern half of Europe and the western half of Europe getting progressively worse, first starting with the big church split where the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church formally recognized each other as independent, and then stuff like the Crusades where Western powers took land that was supposed to be Byzantine and then actually in the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople and took a whole bunch of stuff back to Venice. Oh, I forgot I should have shown some of that stuff as an example. But anyway. And now we're going to talk about specifically like Italy. Because Italy is really where the Renaissance kind of gets jump-started. And it's really interesting because of the setup that it has, because the way that Italy was for most of the medieval period was rather unique. Most notably, it wasn't one kingdom. DCI Banks is getting sued. Maybe. Is the Dark Ages a Eurocentric term? I imagine there was lots going on elsewhere. Yeah. So the Dark Ages specifically is a term that gets started around this time period. Specifically, a guy that we're about to talk about quite a bit named Petrarch might have been the guy that actually started using the Dark Ages to refer to the period of time that we would today call the medieval period. But the term itself, Dark Ages, gets applied to that period of time between Western Roman collapse and the beginning of the Renaissance. And it's a bit fuzzy. I don't really like using the term, and it's really one that all historians should abandon, and we should either call it the medieval period, or we could break it down into several different versions. Like I prefer using the term late antique or late antiquity, which I think is a really great term that stretches from about 400 to 800, and then you get the early medieval period, which is about 800 to about 1000. And then you get the high medieval period, which is about 1000 to about 1200, and then you get the Renaissance. That's the terminology that I like to use. Are we currently in the Snark Ages? No, I think if we had to rhyme something, we'd probably be in the Bark Ages, because we make a whole lot of noise and we don't really stand behind any of it. What year is this? So we're talking generally about the period of time in Italy that's from about the year 1200 to about the year 1400. So somewhere in that zone. And if we look at the map here, I can show you this. This is the map of Italy from about 1300. And you can see here, it's not one kingdom. It's a whole lot of different stuff. We've got all these different kingdoms. Like Aragon is a Spanish kingdom. This is not Aragorn, and this is not Aragon, the guy with the dragon. This is Aragon, is a Spanish kingdom that controls Sardinia and Sicily. Corsica is ruled by Genoa. Then you have the Kingdom of Naples. Then you actually have the Papal States, which are run directly by the Pope. Then you have the Republic of Venice. You've got Tuscany. You've got Florence, Lucca, Modena, Milan, Genoa, Savoy. You've got Ferrara, Mantua. You've got all these little city-states and polities up here in the northern part of Venice. And that's a great point, or a great question, Kahini. They don't have kings. Most of these do not have kings. Now, the Kingdom of Naples does have a king, but Florence and Tuscany and Genoa and Milan and Savoy and Venice, they're not run by kings. And that itself is actually really important to the beginning of the Renaissance, because if there's not a hereditary title that gets passed down from one royal family to the next, what that means is there's a potential for everybody to get there, right? If we're running, and most of these are running under various types of oligarchies or republics. Now, when we say republic, let's be very clear here that we're not talking about full-out democracy. The Republic of Venice was a republic that was run by the big merchant families, and the ruler, or the word that we use, or that they used, was the Doge. And it's not like the Shiba dog from Japan. The Doge is sort of like Duke. But the Doge of Venice was chosen by yearly competitions of who made the most money. So if you had the most capital and the most financial gain by the end of the year, you got to kind of make decisions for Venice as a group. But you had to make these in concert with all of the other big merchant families. So again, what this means is there's opportunity. And with opportunity comes competition. And with competition comes innovation. And this is so important, because while the larger countries like France and Germany, which at that time was the Holy Roman Empire, and Spain were being dominated by hereditary nobles and kings, you had other places that were trying to compete and having to come up with new ideas, right? Yeah, they all have different rulers. Tarragon is a seasoning. By default, that makes Arthur their king. If he could show up with a fancy sword, he could probably take some of them out. I'm surprised the Papal States are so small considering the power of the Catholic Church. So what's really interesting is not that the Papal States weren't large. It's that the Papal States existed by itself. Like, the fact that the Pope directly controlled these territories is a mark of exactly how much power the Catholic Church had. Because there is a lot of really good farmland in this region, and there is a lot of really good money to be made in this region. And the fact that the church directly held this by themselves and had their own army and had their own mercenaries is only because the Catholic Church was so powerful. And they expand and contract at various points in time, but at the moment, that's sort of where they were in the 1300s. I'm surprised. The Merchant of Venice. Yeah, exactly. Is this when the Medicis come in? Yeah, we'll talk about the Medicis here in just a second. So it's like a mercenary state. No. It's ruled by the Pope, and he is the sovereign. The Vatican today is the remnant of the Papal States. It was a completely separate country with its own rules and laws. The Pope was just the head of it. It was technically a theocracy. What up, Tuna? Oligarchies and aristocracies. Correct. Ford's top 100, but in antiquity. That's a lot of the way that this stuff is, Dame Karen. That's a lot of the way that it is, because you want to be the top. And with all of these little cities being so closely together, not only is there competition within the cities to make sure that you could be in the driver's seat, but there's also competitions between the cities. So Venice is fighting with Genoa, and Milan is fighting with Florence, and Siena is fighting with Modena. And all of these cities are wanting to be the best. They want to be the one that everybody wants to do business with. They want to be the one that everybody looks to as the beacon and the example, right? So this is a very critical part of why the Renaissance starts here, because there's this openness that's available where other places in the world do not have. I think the Pope got land to offset some power struggle. In various time periods, the Pope has had lots of land. The Papal States exist, and then they don't exist, and they exist again. It goes back and forth, and the borders move. People give them land, and then the church will grant other people land, and then you'll get your cousin elected Pope, and he'll transfer some of this land to the hereditary holdings of Florence or Venice or something like that, and the Papal States will shrink, but it's all political in the long run. Were the other all of these were Christian states. All of them were, and they were Catholic. So the only way to be Christian at this point was to be Catholic, in the West anyway. I mean, all the smaller regions or whatever they're called. Okay, let me go back up. I think I've missed something. So it's like a mercenary state. No, they all had their own individual armies. And Venice had a really, really big navy. Genoa had a big navy. They hire mercenaries, but they're not purely based on mercenary armies. They have their own forces that they can call to arms. Pope Francis is coming for you. Go Siena. Oh, Siena's beautiful. I love Siena. It's a really, really pretty city. The hills will get you, though. If you're not careful, you walk around you walk around in Siena and you're going to regret it. That your calves are going to start barking at you. Give me land, lots of land, lots of land. Don't poke me in. Yeah, I see what you did there. If you're in the West, you're Catholic. Eastern Orthodox exists even still today. If they were Catholic, what's stopping them from succeeding? I don't know if I exactly know the question here. Could you say that a different way for me? You did a dig outside of Siena, a little town called Vescovado. Huh. I've never been there. But there's a lot of cool stuff archaeologically right around there. A lot of cool stuff archaeologically right around there. Anyway, so Italy's not unified. This is a big deal, and that's a big part of it. We have different people making decisions. They're able to make decisions that are outside of the box. Even though they are Catholic, they're able to dodge a lot of the stuff because they don't have kings, right? It's in Merlo. There's a tiny Etruscan museum there. Oh, cool. I have been to a lot of Etruscan sites, Maddie. Shoot. What? Where did... now I'm losing all of my words. Cervatelli. Cervatelli. There's a really, really big Etruscan tumulus necropolis. It's about 30 minutes north of Rome at a place called Cervatelli. It is really, really cool. No, you don't bother. No, it's just me trying to keep everything straight. Commerce brings things that are worth trading. Yes, and that's the kicker, Diviner. That's what ends up happening here. So this competition is going to sometimes lead to war, but it's also going to bring economics, and it's also going to be about bragging rights, right? So I want to make more money. I want my city to be cooler than yours. This is going to push innovation. Hey, stop chewing. And this is going to push contact with the Greek East, because that's where some of the cool stuff is. If the other states were Catholic, and assuming religion was the utmost importance to them, what prevented them from coming under the power of the Pope? Did they not recognize the Catholic Church? The religious theory was in place for kings, right? We know that kings are under the direction of God because God chooses kings. So there had been about, at this point, probably 700 or 800 years of kingly submission to the Pope. And politically speaking, that was really entrenched logic, right? If the Pope says the kings do something, the kings have to do something. The Pope and the religious body of the Catholic Church did not have a lot of existing laws that covered things like mercantile activity. You weren't supposed to trade with Muslims, but there wasn't really anything that said you couldn't go off and found some venture capital trade to the east and drag back a whole ton of gold and make yourself fabulously wealthy. There weren't necessarily any sort of established Catholic precepts that said if you are discussing things as a group of nobles, the primacy of the church is over your economic decisions. So because it's novel in practice, the theory hasn't caught up to it yet. Now, if you give it 250 years, it's going to catch up, right? Because if you get to the 1600s, you see popes at that time figuring out how they can manipulate Venice. And they do stuff like, okay, Venice, you've got to join this Holy League and go fight this big battle against the Ottomans. And you've got to do it. And then the Venetians end up having to do it. But it takes a while. There's this sort of gap where the novel ideas outpace the sort of dormant or sort of old-fashioned ideology of the power structure rules between terrestrial power and economics and the Catholic Church, if that makes any sense. That was kind of the plot to Beckett, maybe. I'm not sure, like Thomas A. Becket, the writer, or Beckett like the TV show Beckett. Money question mark? I don't know what that was like. Yeah, they ran on the Air Bud logic. That's actually a great thing, right? There's nothing that says that a dog can't play in the NBA. It's not specifically written down. Yeah, Thomas A. Becket. Yeah. And that's going to be a little bit later on than what we're talking about here, but that's in the same sort of like Renaissance arc of thinking outside of just the accepted ways of thinking. Oh, you mean Beckett the play? I thought you were talking about Beckett, the guy in the church. Now I've completely lost the through line. The church power versus. Oh yeah, okay. Church versus king. Now I'm with you. Yes. It's a long road to get to a yes, right? Anyway, why is Italy in more position to be in contact with the East? For a few reasons. First off, Italy was the last part of the Western Roman Empire to fall, and it had been reconquered by Roman emperors in the 500s and re-added to the Roman Empire. So the connection between Italy and the East was still, the division between Italy and the East was much younger than the division between places like Spain and France and the East. There had been really frequent contact, of course, between Rome and all of the big cities of the East prior to the Great Schism. A lot of the people from Italy went on crusade, so they had seen the East with their eyeballs. The trade that comes out of the Crusades was in many ways driven by Italian merchants, especially Genoa and especially Genoa and Venice, but also banking became a really, really important part of the Italian money-making structure. And this is where the Medicis come in. So banking, as we understand it today, is very, very different than banking was back in the medieval world. This was something that had been practiced in theory a little bit before the Crusades, but really got jump-started by the Crusades, especially when you have a lot of people traveling from Europe on these very long journeys to the Middle East or to the eastern part of the Mediterranean. So the Medici family, like Lorenzo de' Medici, they're just sort of generally referred to as the Medicis. It's not Medicis, no. It's Medicis. It was kind of the Siena was huge for... before the plague. So early 1300s. And you see these Italians getting involved in banking through a couple of really interesting ways, most notably things like the Knights Templar, who had a lot of activities with banking in the Holy Land. One of the reasons they ran afoul of the French kings was probably because of banking policy and stuff like that. So the way that this worked was that you went to a bank, right? And this was not a bank the way that we think of as a bank. It's usually going to be something that is either fronted by a religious organization, like maybe an order of knights, like the Templars, or it's going to be backed by a really fabulously wealthy family. And you're going to give them a big old chunk of money. And then they're going to write you basically a receipt. And then you're going to travel to wherever you're going. Perhaps you're going to Jerusalem on pilgrimage. So you get your note, and you're going to travel to Jerusalem. And when you get to Jerusalem, you're going to find the outpost of Siena's big banking families. And you're going to show them the note, and they're going to look at it, and it was written in such a way that it could be verified. There were going to need to be signatures and seals in place. And when you got that note to the Siena bankers in Jerusalem, they were going to give you that same amount of money back out of their stores on hand, so that you didn't have to travel carrying all of your money. So this is kind of how banking worked. But the kicker is they're going to charge you a little bit of a fee for this, of course, right? And now, to be clear, this is not interest, because interest was still a big no-no in the Christian world. You weren't supposed to charge anybody usury. But I was going to be offering you a service. I was going to be offering you a service. And now the service could be charged based on amount or duration of time. And I might even offer you a bit of a benefit depending on whether or not you decided to give me some of your money and then promise not to get it out in a certain amount of time. For example, if you wanted to deposit money with me, I might give you a certain amount of money back, or if I was going to hold your money for a long time, I might charge you a certain fee for it. This was not interest. This was a fee for a service, and this is the loophole that they use to get around this stuff. Obviously, it's interest, and obviously they're going to become fabulously wealthy off of this stuff. Service charges, exactly. The Great Schism by Tool. I do really like that song. It's probably my favorite Tool song. It's definitely my favorite Tool song off of Lateralis. It might be my favorite Tool song ever. Schism is a great song. I'm not interested. Exactly. What about otters? I'm not sure about otters. It's like a tax, a fee for a service. Yeah, something like that. What about the interest in religious people? The same with Muslims too. Yeah. So this is a Christian tenet where you're not supposed to charge interest to other Christians. It's the same thing that comes out of Judeo-Christian ideology that Muslims use. That bass line lives in your soul, like yeah, it's good stuff. Just came in. Are we talking about indulgences? No, we're not there yet, Tad. That will show up in. They're around at this time period, but they're not like the big deal at this time period. Were there any Jewish bankers at this point? Sort of, but the problem there is. When the Christian banking, or the people that are Christians that start banking start up, people are going to prefer them over any sort of Jewish stuff going on. And the Jewish banking that exists is a lot more like payday loan stuff. It's also a lot more like kind of title loan stuff where you need to put up capital for money. It's not the same sort of process. And again, this is very, very different than banking today. Cowboy Deng Xiaoping. That's a great name. It's the Second Testament and onwards idea. Yeah. Banking and not interest, indeed. Hence, there was less of a taboo around Jewish communities. Exactly, because in the Jewish communities didn't have that same precept, right? Strangely enough, the Medici turned Siena into a Jewish ghetto that lasted until Polish. Yeah. That wasn't until a little bit later on after what we're talking about. But yeah, that ended up happening more or less. Should I tell my Muslim friends that it comes from a Judaic-Christian tradition? I mean, you could if you wanted to, because that's where it is. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about Islamic people or their belief sets, but evidently, and even by his own admission, Muhammad took quite a bit of both Christian and Jewish tradition into his teachings for Islam. Okay. You mean it's built? Yeah, it's kind of in there. So we've got these new ideas. We've got this contact. We've got more contact. If we need even newer ideas, where are we going to go look? Well, we can't. If we are a rich merchant in Venice, we're not going to be able to go to Paris and start looking for stuff that's going to be new and innovative because we already know what they're doing. We're not going to be able to go to Seville in Spain and look for new innovative ideas because we already know what they're doing. We need to go to places that we don't understand that are doing things differently than us. So we're going to go to places that are in the East. And when we get over there, we're going to start talking to these people about, like, hey, what are you all doing? What's going on in your world? How do you like this stuff? And they're going to say, oh yeah, man, we get this idea. This came from you all. Haven't you ever read this obvious thing? Like, haven't you guys ever read the letters of Cicero? And they're like, who's Cicero? Because again, a lot of this stuff that was commonplace in the Roman world had been lost or not translated for hundreds of years. So the exposure to the Greek world and the eastern part of the Mediterranean is going to give these people access to new/old ideas. Stuff like philosophy, stuff like science and mathematics, things that people in the East never stopped doing, but stuff that people in the West hadn't done in centuries. But did Muhammad know any trades? Yeah, like he literally knew trading. His uncle was a caravanserai, and Muhammad worked for his uncle quite successfully for the majority of his young life. Islam is not older than Christianity. Muhammad was supposed to be the last of the Abrahamic. Yes, exactly. Jesus, Prophet Isa, right? Who was Caesar? Yeah, exactly. Islam follows the Bible as a holy text. Well, not directly. The Islamic view of the Christian Testament and the Jewish Tanakh is that they contain elements of truth that were properly conveyed through prophets to the people, and then the people either misunderstood or misinterpreted the words of the prophets into their scriptures. So if a Muslim person looks at stuff in the Old Testament or the Tanakh, whatever you want to call it, Jewish scripture, they're going to say, oh yes, we have these same people. We have, Abraham, and we have Isaac and Ishmael. But you look at things like Deuteronomy or Leviticus, and a Muslim person is going to go, man, they got the prophecy from God, and then they really tried to fix it themselves, and they did it wrong. They were almost there, right? They're so close, but they're so far. And then they're going to look at the New Testament, and they're going to say, oh yeah, so Jesus and Isa are the same person. So Isa is just Arabic for Jesus, basically. And they're going to say, oh man, that guy was saying the stuff, and he was a good prophet. But man, those Christians, they messed up. They thought that he was God, but he was just a prophet. And they thought that, he was saying that he was going to send the Holy Spirit to them, but what he's actually talking about was Muhammad. That was going to come a little bit later. And that's why Islamic law considers Christianity and Judaism people of the book, because they look at Christianity and Judaism as having elements of truth, but not following through with it the right way, whereas Islam has the same truths and others coming from Muhammad, and they follow it the right way according to Islamic interpretation of the scripture. New old ideas, right, indeed. I think there's a bit of disinterest in Iberian Renaissance thinking. Sometimes people forget that Iberia was Oh, yeah. Cowboy, we've talked about the Iberian Peninsula extensively, and I've shown a whole bunch of really cool stuff going on over there. In many ways, if you go back to the Emirate of Cordoba, that was fancier stuff than Spain had ever seen for hundreds of years, and they were going through a renaissance of ideology. Like if you look at the Alhambra, right? That was something that would never have been built anywhere else in the Western European world, but it was because the Muslim people that were building that were still connected to the East. They were still connected to the learning centers in places like Baghdad and Damascus through northern Africa because of their ties back to the Caliphate, right? So Spain was going through all of that stuff and had a lot of that stuff, and then during the Reconquista period, when the Christian forces are taking this back over, is during like 1000s, 1100s, 1200s, into the 1300s, you're going to see the Christian forces that are taking these places back over adapting this technology and this learning and stuff that's going on in their world to Christian ideas. The kicker here, though, is the rest of Western Europe looks at Spain a little bit down its nose because Spain had so much influence from the Islamic world, and the rest of the Christian world was like, you're taking those Muslim ideas? And so they kind of just sat out for a little while. And even today, there's not a lot of interest in, especially post-Franco Spain, in admitting that a lot of their Renaissance ideology came from exposure to Muslim thinkers during the Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. Because, Franco was all about Christian fascism, right? It wasn't Italy all the time. No, it wasn't. And we're just talking about the beginning of this stuff in this particular area. We're not doing the entire Renaissance tonight. There's just no way to do it. I could tell you I have met the shepherd Jesus, but then nobody will take me seriously anymore. Perhaps. I don't know. Initially, I read that as Liberia was hypercultural. Yeah, Liberia didn't exist at that point. But the words of the prophets were written on the subway walls. Were they? I didn't know that. Are you just standing behind me? Are you okay back there, puppy? Come here. Come and see me. Come here. We need a puppy healthcare break. Come here. Hey, come see me. Come on. Come on. No. Come here. Come on. Come on. You can come up here. Yeah, that's a good girl. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a good puppy. Some cuddle? Yeah, that's a good girl. You're okay. I know that I'm not paying attention to you. I'm trying to talk to the people on stream. I know. And you don't have your bond mate here to help you out. She really misses my wife right now. As someone that grew up Mormon for 15 years, I feel like Islam is just a different flavor of misinterpreting Judaic and Christian traditions. I'm sure that there are people that would agree with you on that. It all seems like the same meme, just a different skin. They all have the same sort of thematic elements, but there are very, very specific differences theologically speaking. And a lot of people that are Christians or Jews or Muslims would not appreciate that idea. They got a room full of people together. I thought they were at the second coming, despite being removed from another included. Okay, I'm just... Dane Caring is snubbed? Did I snub somebody? I hope not. Also, Husk, welcome in. I don't think I said hello to you when you came in. Good to see you. Yeah, there's the puppy. The snort, yeah. Dog first, streamer second. I mean, I love you all, but I gotta take care of the puppy, right? Do you think that Renaissance origins are therefore more to do with connectivity to the Eastern centers that have continued learning from antiquity, or that it has more to do with urban civic thinking occurring humanistic academia? I tend to lead towards the latter when looking humanistic renaissances in places. So that's okay. So that's part of it, and we're actually about to get to humanism here. I mean, I guess we can go ahead and do it now. Look at this guy. This guy is Petrarch. Woo. Who is this dude? Well, the greatest of all time. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there, cowboy. I see where you're headed. We just gotta get there in baby steps sometimes. So I try to make sure that everything that I'm doing is approachable, and that I make my points not necessarily slowly but deliberately. I don't want to skip into getting too far into the meta or the macro, because a lot of people that might be hanging out in stream don't have the necessary micro contact. Or micro context to get all the big macro points. 30 seconds. Are we ad streaming? Oh, so we're in an ad. I'll just hang out here for a little bit till everybody gets back from the ad. I'm not in an ad. Read above. Different understanding of belief. I wouldn't say misinterpreting. Last episode I saw was the Scythians. Can you explain where the Muslims and the Christians came from in the 1200 year? No, I couldn't. I don't know. Maybe I'd have to plan it. Christianity grew out of the Jewish tradition in the 1st century AD as a subset of Jewish ideology that followed the teachings of a guy named Jesus of Nazareth, who promoted himself as the savior of humanity and the predicted Jewish Messiah. That religion flourished for several hundred years under the aegis of the Roman Empire. In the 500s, we get a guy named Muhammad, who was an Arabian that traveled into the Holy Land and saw Jewish people and Christian people, and had an experience where he said that he received the proper teachings from the angel Gabriel, who's Gabriel, and that God had chosen him to be the final prophet. Therefore, he had the only true teachings and established Islam as a religion. Islam and Christianity then fought with each other for about 800 years to get to the point where we are. So there you go. What's up, Snowlock? Good to see you. Scythians weren't part of the main series of history lessons. Yeah. So I think that might be the kicker. So Tuesdays we do viewer requests, and those can be anything, right? So the next viewer request is going to be the Crimean War. Thursdays is chronological history. So last Thursday when we streamed, we were doing the Ottoman Empire's rise, the origins of the Ottomans, and we're getting to that same time period now, just from the Christian side of things going on in Europe. And then next stream we'll be looking at 12 and 1400 stuff going on over in the New World, and then we might actually do that for 2 streams, I don't know, and then we'll cross the international date line and we'll pick up with a new era, and we'll look at stuff from like 1500s in Japan, and then we'll do probably Korea, and then we'll do maybe China and Southeast Asia, then we'll do Central Asia, then we'll do India, then we'll do some stuff in Africa, and we just kind of go back around the world, but we do it in phases of a couple hundred years, just so that we can get through lines of things that are happening. And sometimes we might zoom in and do one person or one event or one war or something like that, but usually we do sort of thematic approach to stuff. Dude, I like Erasmus a lot. Erasmus is my homie. Praise of Folly is one of my favorite books of all time, period, hands down. When you can write an entire book telling literally everybody that they're stupid and people read it and go, man, that guy's so smart, you have done something epic. Erasmus was a G. You can blame me for the ad. Sorry, Tad. Also, Tad, hey, good to see you, man. Welcome in. If Mormon theology is not fundamental interpreting, I don't know what to say to you. So, like, I try my best not to take personal stances on anybody's religious beliefs. Everybody can believe whatever they want to believe. It's not my position to tell you what to believe. It's not my position to tell you your cosmology. I'll tell you what I believe, but it's not really my job to make a stance on these things and try to get everybody's opinion sorted in the correct way according to my taste. If you want to know what my opinion is, you can summon the opinion hat and I'll tell you, but it's not my thing. Snowlock, if you want, man, I can put you on the list for viewer requests. You probably have enough points to buy one. If you have 10,000 points, you can buy a viewer request stream. But you have to stand in line. So I've got a line here that I keep on my phone. But you are now on the list. So when it comes around for us to have an opening to buy a viewer request stream, if you're in the chat, I'll call your name out. You can tell me that you're ready, and you can buy one at that point. Apparently, Jesus is actually named Joshua. Yesu. It comes from the Hebrew, but yeah. Henny, thank you so much for super amounts of gift subs. Very much appreciated. Goodness gracious, I'm so far behind in chat. Did they pronounce the J as a Y in the time of Jesus? So, depends on who you're talking to, hydrocannabinoid. Also, welcome in. Depends on the language that you're looking at. But the word Yeshua is the same word as Jesus, is the same word as Joshua, and is the same word as Yesu. And it's also where Arabic gets Isa from. And it's all the same letters that get pronounced different ways through different languages. And, you know, you've got Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek and Latin and Arabic, so it just depends on which one of the languages you're using. On the Erasmus subject, I wish it was more common in modernity for dialogues as rhetoric in academic writing. Dude, I love rhetoric too. I'm with you, Cowboy. One of the few writers who are really easily digestible even from today. Yeah. Claudia, what do you mean? What do I believe? You'll have to give me a little bit more qualification. You need a T saying Erasmus is my homie. I don't think it matters what we believe. I think we're on our own journey of experience. If there was a universal belief, it would be simple because in order to be universal, it would need to be the lowest common denominator. I feel you. Kind of like how B is pronounced as V in Russian. Yeah. Or V is pronounced as B in Spanish, too, right? What do I believe about what? Claudio, you had to give me something specific. This is the opinion hat, though. When the opinion hat comes out, I stop being impartial and I start talking about just what I like or what I think. But you got to give me something to... and I guess I'll progress the stream and Claudio can come back in with an idea. Anyway, Petrarch. Who is this guy? Why is he a big deal? So, Petrarch, born in Italy, but right around Florence, by the way. And he's going to spend a lot of time up in Avignon in France because this is also the period of time where we have the Avignon papacy, which is something that we might actually need to cover next stream. I don't know. I'll think about it. But he's in the church, but he's not necessarily like in the church because he doesn't think the same way that a lot of people think. And he's one of the first like real active rich guy tourists. His family had money. He got to travel a lot and he traveled for fun. And he would actually go to places and see stuff and climb mountains and then write about it. Or he would go to see buildings and write about it. And in the process of traveling, one of the things that he started doing was looking for texts. He likes digging around in these old monastery libraries or these old church libraries, and he wants to find stuff that nobody knows about. And so then he brings them back to the scholars in Italy or the church scholars, and he tries to get them translated so that everybody can read them. And he finds a lot of cool stuff. He finds a lot of those Greek and Roman classics. He finds Cicero again. The big collection of letters of Cicero that had not been read in Western Europe by people for hundreds of years, right? He is going to be instrumental in spreading the idea that you should read stuff that's not just church stuff. And that is huge because, again, for hundreds of years, we've got this ideology that if we're going to expend effort, it really should be to get to the afterlife. That's the point of effort. But Petrarch has a different idea, and this is astronomically important. And this idea basically goes on to be called humanism. And it's one of the most important ideas that makes the Renaissance the Renaissance. Humanism. What is humanism? Basically, it's the belief that we should study the human condition and we should focus on having better lives. And this is actually, at this time period in history, super radical, right? Our life is in heaven. We're not supposed to worry about stuff here where moth and rust can destroy. We're supposed to focus on the afterlife. But Petrarch goes, no, look, man, God has given us a mind, and we're going to use that to think, and we're going to use that to innovate and adapt and critique and love and write. And people are like, wait. You're saying that we can have fun during life? And he's like, yes, that's the point of being a human, is to enjoy the world around you and to use your capabilities to further not just yourself, but humanity as a whole, right? We're just trying to be good people, and if we all pull in the same direction, we can make the world better, right? This dude was a big deal. He was a big deal. I remember reading a paper on the Renaissance in Great Britain arguing that it never occurred there, but that seems at odds with everything that you know. Oh yeah, the Renaissance gets up to England. It just gets up there about 150 to 200 years after it starts down in Italy. I mean, Shakespeare is a Renaissance writer in England. So there absolutely is a Renaissance in England. Absolutely, 100%. It's just a little bit later. How rich do you have to be to have a hobby of reading stuff that isn't church stuff? Frank, that's exactly how rich you have to be. long fart react. What? I mean, this is still a controversial thought today, just perhaps with less religious spin. Sure, sure. I wanted to go to the Erasmus University for Archaeology when you were in high school. Is that in Rotterdam? I don't actually know where that's located, Maddie. It is in Rotterdam. Okay, cool. Petrarch is a sus JoJo character looking guy, but he's actually a protagonist. Yeah, I mean, he's a big deal. And he actually ends up kind of being a rock star. Everybody reads his stuff, and people buy his writings and will pay a lot of money for somebody to hand copy out his travel stories or his poems. He starts writing poetry, and that's crazy, right? Like, and the poems that he's writing aren't all about churchy stuff. And he actually gets so popular that other people end up setting his stuff to music. Like, they're writing music specifically to put Petrarch's poetry into music. This, by the way, is where we get Wallace and Sonnet, because Petrarch is going to recreate things that had not really been as scientifically advanced in writing in Europe for a long, long time, because he brings back stuff like rhyme scheme and meter, and he's going to focus a lot on these really technically skilled written words, and he's going to write sonnets. And now his rhyme scheme for the Petrarchan sonnets are different than the Shakespearean sonnets. So if you've read Shakespeare sonnets and then you read a Petrarch sonnet, it doesn't rhyme the exact same way, but it's the same concept. It's the iambic pentameter and all that stuff like that. So this is where the stuff starts, and Petrarch gets it out there, and people just love this guy, and they eat up his stuff, and he starts... he's not like literally the first guy that does the Renaissance, but he very much is a Renaissance man, and he might very well be the first actual real Renaissance man of the entire Western European world. It's also fair to point out that China had a Renaissance about 300 years before this, and did a lot of stuff that they're going to do in Europe 400 years or 300 years before the Europeans did it. Like, at this point in China, they already have movable type printing press, which isn't something that Gutenberg is going to invent in Europe for another 200 years, right? China's way ahead of them technologically. I'm not trying to say like this is the point where the world is born. No, I'm not Eurocentric like that. Can I blame him for repopularizing the slant rhyme? No, you can't, because he's actually really stodgy about his rhyme schemes. But this humanism idea is crazy important, and the Italians are going to latch onto this and run with it. And you start seeing stuff, and I'll put the adventure hat back on, because I'm going to show you a lot of pictures of stuff that sort of represent humanism. Again, this is what I wear when I go into the field, because I burn like mad. And I like sharing pictures that I've taken pictures of. So, like this. This is a lion. And you're like, oh, that's a pretty cool statue. I agree, it's a really cool statue. This statue is a Roman statue that was probably carved back around the 200s. But today, it sits in an open-air museum in Florence called the Loggia. And the Loggia was built and funded by the Medici family of Florence because they wanted people to see cool stuff. And so they actually had this moved up to Florence. And if you go to the Loggia today, there are still probably about a dozen different statues that come from various time periods from the Roman world that were put out for the public consumption. This wasn't something that was like, if you wanted to go see a big cool statue during the medieval period, you're probably going to have to go to a church. But the humanists in Florence said, no, it's not just the church that should be enriched by this, it's everybody's life. So we're going to put this out where everybody can see it. And if you walk into Florence and you look over and you want to go look at the cool statues, you go do it, and that might make your world better. This is what humanism is. This is the ideology that is going to push the Renaissance. It's actually quite remarkable how much anti-iconoclasm in the aggrandizement of the Italian city-states contributed to this movement. Oh yeah, exactly, right? Like the idea that this wasn't just a church thing. Beauty and art and crazy stuff was not just the church thing. Don't mention the hat. No, man, I love the hat. Now, that is not to be said that the church leaves themselves out of this stuff, because the church is going to get involved. And then they do stuff like this. So this is in Florence as well. And this is the central dome of a really big building. That's the Basilica of Florence. It's referred to locally as Il Duomo. But they're going to start building cool stuff like domes again. And this church is just massively decorated and is going to look different than just about every other church in the world at the time. But this is part of humanism too. Because if everybody can make things cool, well, the church can make things cool too. No, the scaffold was not taken from Rome. The scaffold is because they are restoring the building and doing a lot of work on the external facade. But this is a direct response to the rise in things like beautification of cities, because people want their church to be the coolest. If I've got friends that live over in Genoa and they're going to come to Florence to hang out, I want to make sure that they show up on a Sunday so that I can walk them to my church and go, check out my cool church. I bet your church doesn't look like that. And this is just about bragging rights for sure, but this is also very much humanism. This is the idea that we are making things cooler and better, and we're pushing what we can do, and we're reclaiming things that we used to be able to do, like build domes. Pastor can rap with you children. He's down with that, right? The modern day design often misses the celebration as part of the human art. Exactly, right? If you go to a lot of big churches today, they look like stadiums, right? That's a cool lion, but check out this cool dome. We got that kind of money. Exactly. But that's the thing, Kahini. That's part of it. We've got that kind of art and that kind of skill. And then we start painting cool stuff. And I'll put this back on one more time. And I'll show you this. So this actually comes from Bologna, which is a little bit away from Florence, but definitely part of this larger movement here. And this is from 1250, right? So if we go to look at art from 1250 in places like Paris or London, they're still going to be very much in the medieval style. But this is painted by a guy named Giunta Pisano, and he did this in 1250. And we can see a big difference here. Most notably, this guy is in 3 dimensions. He's not flat like that icon that I showed you to begin with. There's shading. He doesn't look exactly like a real person. There's artistic license in his pose, his stance. All of this stuff here is evidence of humanism. We are going to paint how we feel, not necessarily how exactly everything looks. But this is still transition. Now, if we get a little bit later and we get to kind of the height of the Renaissance, a little bit of this goes away and we have to start getting into Renaissance realism. But you had this really great period in the early Renaissance where we're transitioning out of just flat 2-dimensional paintings and into 3-dimensional design with stuff like shading. And you get really great pieces of art like this. So cool stuff and evidence of the time. Let me catch back up. Scaffolding was invented before Christianity. It was. My Bologna has a first name. It's, OSCAR, right? Everything was invented by Christianity. What's up, P-Matt? Good to see you, my friend. How you been? He does have abs. He does have curves. I see. What's up? Appreciate the lurk. Jesus in his mocking phase. I feel like the art style holds up really well. Yeah. And that's what's happening in these Italian cities. People are coming up with new ways of doing things. It's a new way to be a human. And it's not just focused on the afterlife. It's focused on recreating the glory of the potential afterlife while you're alive, because then you can explore it and enjoy it now, right? If you were a painter in these times, was there a way to buy standard paints, or did you have to alchemy up your own palette? Frank, that's a great question. There were not a lot of like art supply stores. If you were going to be a painter, you are probably going to have a little bit of the alchemy on the side, but you're going to go to a merchant who's going to specialize in making paints. And these were sometimes hard to come by, especially if we're looking at the early Renaissance period like we're talking about right now, like when things are just getting started. But there are going to be people that have really highly specialized skills in sourcing the materials that you need to make the specific pigments, and then making the preparations needed to turn those pigments into actual paints. But you're still going to have to know a lot about how that stuff works. And in some cases, you might have the skill and access to certain things so that you can make your own certain types of colors, where other colors that you might need are going to be much harder to come by, and you're going to have to go to the paint supply guy for him to make you up these colors. And some of this stuff is really, really expensive because a lot of these colors are very painstakingly crafted. And if you want to know more about this, I think the person that you should probably ask that legitimately knows more about this than I do is Big Tuna Neil. And I'm sure that he wouldn't mind you. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say that. Tuna knows a lot of stuff about ancient pigments and paints, and he is an expert in this much more than I am. Stoked to hear another lecture. Excellent. Both depending on the location. Yeah, that's right. So some paints are really easy to come by in certain places, others not so much. You love the stream so far because this is a fantastic presentation, hybridized with engagement. Twister, that's the point, man. I'm really glad that you said that, because that's what I want to do, right? History doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be unreachable. It doesn't have to be unattainable. It doesn't have to be reading off of a PowerPoint. It's about actively engaging with history. And I have an idea of what I want to talk about, but that doesn't mean that I have to just read off of my notes, right? I'll even show you what I have here. I've got a, let me see if I can share this. Is it here? Nope. Nope, that's not it. That's Google Earth full screen. Can I do web? Nope, that's not it. Can I do this? Ah, yeah, here we go. Okay. So this is what I have. And it's basically just an outline. And I typed this morning, and it took me about 20 minutes to just make sure that I know what I'm talking about. And we're kind of like right here, we're wrapping up, right? We've talked about the Medici family. We've talked about how people are getting back into art. We're going to set up public art spaces. We're going to do new architecture stuff. And, you know, we're just kind of into the wrap-up chat part now. But that's what I like to do. I really enjoy helping people understand stuff. And I think that this is how we make the world better. I'm still very much a humanist myself. If you were a painter, you had a shop full of people that processed the ingredients to make your paints. There we go. 2 gills of Vanta Black, please. There we go. Jade is awesome, and I don't understand why his stream isn't higher up. Well, you know, part of that is because I don't stream for long periods of time. You know, a lot of the people that have super high viewer counts will stream for 6 or 7 hours at a time. I also don't stream in the big channels, you know, so like video games are where most of the viewers of Twitch are. So I'm in a niche in a niche, right? And even within that niche of pure just chatting people, I'm in a further niche of people that just chat about history. As far as I know, and I don't know this for certain, but as far as I know, I am the only person that kind of does this version of history Twitch stuff. But tell your friends, bring them on. The more the merrier. I always enjoy a room full of people interacting. That's the great part of it. I get a lot more out of this sometimes than I do even my actual college courses, where I'm trying to talk with people and get them to interact with me, and they're staring at me like they're zombies, right? Oh yeah, those royal purples, right. Fun fact, paint was often sold in animal bladders. You could snip off a corner and squeeze out what was needed. That's a great fact, Tuna. I did not know that. Something mixing with an egg yolk, right? To thicken it up and make it sticky, yeah. Would picturing Jesus on the cross actually physically suffering advance a humanist cause instead of depicting him as a god who didn't suffer as in Gnostic texts? Okay, so that's a great question, Xanta, but the thing is here, a lot of the Gnosticism had been purged from Christianity by about the time we get to 451. So in 323, when we have the Council of Nicaea, they really tried to go hard against any sort of Gnosticism. They outlawed Arianism according to canon law. So the idea that there was a physical Jesus and a spiritual Jesus and they weren't the same, that's a big problem. And then we have the big debates about, are we the same spirit? Are we the same physical stuff? And then we get homoousion and homoousion, and we have all of that big debates. But by the time we get to the Council of Chalcedon in 451, the Gnosticism concepts had mostly been pushed out of Christianity, and they had mostly been sort of replaced with Neoplatonic ideas that are going to look at the concepts of being able to be perfect versions. So for Jesus to be the ideal, the Platonic ideal, he would have to be both perfect human and perfect spirit in the same body for him to be God. And they kind of just use that as a catch-all. And most of the Gnostic stuff, including all of the Gnostic literature by that point, had been put under a lot of anathema. So you're not going to see stuff like the infancy Gospels of Christ or the Gospel of Thomas or anything like that, Gospel of Judas, anything that would purport a division between Jesus's physical and spiritual existence. That had all been put in the no-no bin, and you weren't supposed to read that. So there wasn't really a big Gnostic movement. That does come back around in Christianity, but not until way later, when we get to some of the early people that are coming up with new ideas that are going to be part of the larger Protestant Reformation. But no, and what's interesting here is that, like, drawing Jesus like a human meant that Jesus was a human, right? Gnosticism is kind of like a whole other thing. Late medieval theology was pretty anti-Gnostic. Yeah, there we go. You're glued to this. Excellent. It's like learning porn. I dig it. It's more than just a focus on scholastic theory around the suffering of Jesus as a man. It prompted humanistic modes of thought a la Catherine of Siena. Oh yeah, dude, Catherine of Siena was legit. I've been to Siena and I didn't get to see her head. I'm very upset. I was traveling with my in-laws and they didn't feel like walking up the hills anymore. So I missed her head, which is on display in the church in Siena. Also, she's a G as well. She doesn't get enough love because she was a woman, but she's absolutely a big part of the Reformation. It's never going to get an answer. Is it shame or hope? I don't know, man. I don't think shame is necessarily the best teacher. I think you can show somebody that they're wrong in a loving way and not make them shamed. Then you could play football with the empty bladder. There we go, right? Just fill it up. I do a good job with not overloading the viewers with details. I mean, I can dig into the weeds if we really want to, but I try to stay at good comprehensive level. Had a wee bit of double take perspective on history the other day. You're listening to some TLC. Hey, yeah. Oh, well, that's from the late 90s, right? No, that's from the early 90s. Or from the late 1900s. Oh, no. I mean, technically, yes. Was that, like, TLC was big in, like, 93, 94 was when Crazy Sexy Cool came out. And then they had, like, their last really big hit was No Scrubs, which is probably, like, what, 98, 99, something like that? People have a hard time processing new information. This is bombarding with all these names. Yeah. Twister, if you ever need me to clarify anything, man, just let me know. You like my niche? I appreciate it. Wallace and Sonnet, that's pretty funny. Yeah. Everything's got to be a pun for a title, right? Going to tell all your more conservative friends to just watch Shane. No, man, I don't want to tear anybody a new one. I just want to help them understand. I want to help everybody understand, right? And I have conservative ideas on certain things. I have liberal ideas on certain things. I just want people to know why they believe what they believe. And a lot of people will express ideology that they don't actually get. And because they don't get it, then they get offended when you try to talk to them about it because they feel uncomfortable. And a lot of people have taken these ideas and put them at the core of their identity, but they don't really understand what those ideas are. So when you ask them questions about that, you're not only just questioning their ideology, you're questioning their identity. And people don't like to not feel like they know who they are. And that's why a lot of people get so offended about stuff and get so bent out of shape because they don't want to actually have a conversation about the ideology because they feel like they're being attacked. Don't look me in the eyes. Don't look at me in the eyes while saying homoousion. Homoousion. Historian who builds Gundams at the same time. Yeah, have yet to come across another streamer like you. You're also a teacher. Yeah. You explain everything so well, coming from somebody that has a learning disability. I see. I appreciate that a lot. I really, really do. And I have spent a lot of time. So I've been teaching now in one form or another for 17 years. So I've got a lot of experience on this stuff. I'm older than I look. I know that I'm getting older and my goatee's going gray. But I've been teaching for a while, and it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I figured out how to talk to people. But I do think it's like if we are all given gifts or we're all good at some things and not good at other things, I really do think breaking stuff down so that people can get it is one of my things. So is the Renaissance responsible for the image of white Jesus? No. We've been doing white Jesus for even longer than that. It definitely reinforced the idea of white Jesus. But people had been doing white Jesus for a long time. A no-no bin is a theological term. Also, what's up, Lopta? Anathema is Nintendo's favorite marketing tool. Yeah. You don't know what you're saying? That's cool. Anathema is like you're not supposed to do it. It's taboo. So if I declare something as anathema, I declare something as taboo. You're not supposed to read it, look at it, touch it, etc. I was there and you didn't even know her head was on display. Yeah. Oh, how far behind am I in chat? Good gracious. Isn't Catherine like one of the four saints of all Europe? Maybe. I don't know. Her incorruptible body is like a whole thing, I think. Maybe, but I thought that her head was specifically on display at a church in Siena. Where geographically did the Gnostic ideas survive during this time, seeing that they're still alive today? You're going to have to look at some really, really small monasteries in places like Syria and southern Egypt, where some of the old Gnostic ideas were still being carried out a little bit. But a lot of the Gnostic ideology today came back into the picture because of the Orientalist movement that started in the late 1800s, well, I guess mid 1800s, where people in Europe kind of rediscovered that Asia was a cool thing and started reading all this old stuff again. But there's Gnosticism and Gnostic ideology even in Greek philosophy to a certain extent. You just have to read the right stuff. No Scrubs was 99. Mary J. Blige was in 93. Catherine of Siena was confirmation of saint. Oh, cool. I just got back from Belize and Guatemala like 2 weeks ago, and when I went to Belize, I buzzed my head down to, like, I put a 3-guard on and just buzzed the whole thing because I was going to a jungle, and man, forget that junk. Late 19, yeah. He did it again. I don't know what he did again. I know it's a bit of a pipe dream, and there wouldn't be so much legal red tape, but it'd be fun to stream a class. I definitely couldn't stream a class live. But I react to you all the same way I react to my students. I learned the most from having my question answered. Yeah, absolutely. No winking at us. Jesus and Mary iconography often match their local populations. Yeah, for sure. So if you go to Egypt, there's like brown Jesus and Mary. And if you go to Ethiopia, you could see black Jesus and Mary. Anathema goes further. You're not even supposed to be able to think about it. Yeah. So, like, it's... Anathema is, like, the worst of the worst taboo. Hey, I caught back up. Caldillo's still not sure what he wants my opinion on. That's cool. So by the way, I'm done with the material that I would normally present, but we can hang around and talk for as much as you all would like, to a certain extent. I can't stay on forever. Eventually, my voice will start getting tired. But as it is, I'm having a good time, and I think everybody's having a good time. So, there we go. Korean Mary, the drip is great. There we go. Tuna wants to know what's in the news. You got something specific you want to talk about, or you just want me to pick something? Something not on the front page of the news. Ooh, something not on the front page of the news. Okay. Something not on the front page of the news. See, the thing is, I don't know what's on the front page of your news because I read weird news and everything is weird and it's on my front page. How about this? Let's talk about not trials, not D-Day, etc. Okay, well, you mean not Trump trials? Because one of the things that I can tell you is about to happen, and this isn't even worthy of the prediction hat because it's going to happen. So July the 1st, the Supreme Court of the United States is going to go on summer recess. And every year the Supreme Court does this thing where they basically force themselves to be done with everything on the docket prior to the end of June. So we are now 6 days into June, and the Supreme Court still has about 15 or 16 big decisions to make. And what that is inevitably going to do is turn June into a media frenzy. So there are huge, impactful decisions that are going to come down within the next few weeks. For example, mifepristone, we're going to decide whether or not you can basically take day after pill stuff. There's going to be a decision about whether or not people that have been put under restraining orders because of domestic disputes and domestic assaults can have access to guns. There's going to be a decision on whether or not a president is completely immune for all actions done while being president. The Supreme Court is also going to decide on whether or not emergency rooms have to administer abortions, if that is the best course of action for an emergency situation. The Supreme Court is going to make a decision about a case coming out of South Carolina about whether or not a state can draw district lines based purely on racial identity. There are going to be huge decisions that are coming out in the next few weeks, and it's going to really, really blow stuff up. So for example, Tad, if a woman that's pregnant is having a pregnancy-related emergency, so let's say that they're going to move into something like, Noble Crumpet, what up? Welcome in. Is that not why you are here? What up, Crumpet? If you are not following my friend Noble Crumpet, you absolutely should. Crumpet is an artist that does art on stream sometimes. Sometimes Crumpet is playing games on stream. And sometimes Crumpet is live streaming tabletop RPG stuff on stream. So if any of that stuff sounds fascinating to you, go give my friend Crumpet a follow. What's up, my friend? How you doing? How was your stream? What's going on? What are we up to today? Art stuff? Game stuff? Let me catch up with chat. Yeah, we're not going to talk about Biden gun trial. You're terrified. This is all bullcrap. Where are we getting human cloning? Potentially, that's already happened in China. Theoretically speaking, or hypothetically speaking, there's a guy that actually got put on trial and banned from doing science in China for doing designer baby stuff. And flying cars, right? There's so much blood on SCOTUS. Yeah. Why would you give domestic violence perpetrators guns? Well, see, the question here is, if I've committed a crime that doesn't count as a felony, or if I've served my my sentence, if I just have a restraining order against me, does that restraining order itself nullify my Second Amendment right to own a gun? And that's the question, right? That's the question the Supreme Court's going to have to decide. You saw Senate Republicans blocked a bill to allow legal right to contraception. So, yeah, Xanta, some of that stuff that's happening right now is basically to put conservatives in the Senate on the record about stuff. And a lot of that is being done by Chuck Schumer and the Democrats to basically make the Republicans stand on what they stand on. And it's a bit of a tactic. They know that the Republicans aren't going to vote for it, but they're still going to make them vote for it and put them on the record. So about the healthcare thing, if a pregnant woman is having an emergency and she goes to the emergency room, if a doctor gives her a diagnosis and says the problem that you're having that is threatening your life is pregnancy related, the person should have the option at that point to have a medical abortion to save the person's life. Now, the person has to make that decision on their own, but the specific question here is, in states that do not allow abortion at all, does an emergency healthcare professional in an emergency room, in an emergency situation, have to comply with the best diagnosis, even if that diagnosis is perform an abortion? And a lot of the states, I think that one is coming out of Idaho. Idaho is saying, no, we should not make our healthcare professionals do abortions, period. Inclined to tip. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the $5. Thanks so much, Inclined to Tip. Living up to your name. I'm trying to catch up with chat, everybody. Hope everybody's doing okay. No, nothing substantial. Yeah, exactly. The Roberts Court is the second worst court since Jim Crow. Ooh, I'd have to pull up all of the decisions. I know that Roberts himself is a very fascinating individual that doesn't seem to have a through line of his decisions, but it's not so great. This isn't weird. This is depressing because we know where some of those decisions are going to go. We do. Is banning TikTok out there? Karen, no. At this point, there are lawsuits that have been launched by the parent company against the federal government, but they have not worked their way up to the Supreme Court yet. That will probably end up happening by the beginning of next year, and the decisions for those might come out by June next year, maybe. We'll see, though. Let's go back to history because this is depressing. Let's go back to historical facts and stop reading the plot to The Handmaid's Tale. Well, see, that's the thing, right? Like, that's the prompt was what's in the news, so we're talking about what's in the news. Playing some Bloodstained. Yeah, I still gotta get around to playing that. I was watching you play that for a while the other day, and you're fighting this boss, and he just like kept being a jerk. And you would switch to like the really, really big sword and you're trying to kill the boss. So crumpets are edible hockey pucks. I like crumpets. They're okay. You don't know if I should, but it doesn't seem like it does based on the Second Amendment. See, that's the thing. Like that's why it's a Supreme Court decision, because it directly calls into question one right versus another constitutional right. Domestic violence is not considered a felony. So to be clear, if I am issuing a restraining order against you, you do not have to be convicted of domestic violence. I can go to a sheriff's department or a police office and say, this person is stalking me. I need to file a restraining order against them. And all I have to do is present enough evidence of the activity to convince either a sheriff's deputy or a police officer to take that to a judge to get them to sign a restraining order. So I don't have to even get you convicted of a felony for domestic violence in order to get a restraining order against you. Bread is delicious. Crumpets equal lie bread. If someone has an example of an ectopic pregnancy. Yeah. So either that or like certain situations, if you are going into miscarriage and you trigger early like early birth stuff and ended up being breached, that can have a lot of stuff. It's interesting how medical abortions were the norm in the hyper-religious European Middle Ages. Yeah. It's just a shift in ideology, right? U.S. question, did the United States Supreme Court grant itself the right of judicial review? Oh, so now we're going to go all the way back to Marbury versus Madison, right? Technically, yes. But Congress didn't stop them from doing it, right? There are certain felony... There are. Who have you been talking to? You better not be telling people that. I've never been accused of domestic violence. Yeah. Twister, I don't think that you are... you're committing domestic violence. I have a question, Shane. Do you know where all of the disqualifications for owning firearms came from? A lot of that had to do with an attempt at denying people very important rights, right? So a lot of the stuff that we look at in the criminal justice system that we think of as just sort of like appellations or adding on to this stuff was originally seen as a denial of a vital right? Like if you commit a felony, you can't vote. And a lot of people are like, who cares? It's just voting, right? Voting used to be way more important to a person than it is today, right? We've lived in a society now where we've had voting for the majority of the population for about the last 100 years or so. And for us, voting is just like this thing that we kind of see as a chore. If you look at the original concepts of how felonies got to include removing the right to vote, it was because they were trying to punish somebody very, very severely and keep them from committing these crimes in the first place. Any thoughts on D-Day landing 80 years ago? Yeah. What's up, Retheus? Good to see you. I'm doing okay. I watched Saving Private Ryan today. It made me sad. Appalachians. It's spelled like this. An appellation is something that you put onto something else. What's going on? You okay? Appalachian. Thoughts on 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge being 20 years old today? Wow, I didn't know that. That makes me feel old, though. I'm not okay anymore, right? Ghosts? I don't know if I believe in ghosts. I've never had a direct interaction with a ghost, so I'm in the let me experience it myself, and then we'll see how I feel about it. You think it's mostly PTSD? Maybe. You read about Teddy Roosevelt Jr. today and learned about his impact at Utah Beach on D-Day. Yeah, Patton tried to get him fired. I ain't afraid of no ghost. Roosevelt Jr. assisted on the first wave. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really, really sort of like gripping stories that come out of that whole story of D-Day. Okay, who's streaming? I think it's probably getting close to time to going and raiding somebody. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, that's the puppy. We can switch to the puppy cam. This is Kaylee. She is missing my wife, who is out of town for the night. And so I moved her bed into here so that she could be beside me while we're streaming. But she's having a doozy of a day. Will the dog be teaching now? Probably not. All right, where are we going to go? Does she watch Firefly? She's named after Kaylee. So her full name is Kaylee Fry McInnes. And my wife named her after Kaylee, the mechanic of the Firefly ship Serenity. So Kaylee, the dog, will sit on the couch with my wife and watch Kaylee, the person. It is a great show. I like it a lot. All right, let's go rate Homozygote. Homozygote is a science streamer, and we haven't rated him in a while. But dude's really smart and is a science educator. Talks about a lot of stuff that's happening in the world with science developments and things like that. So, yeah, your friend named her daughter Kaylee after that same thing. Oh, that's cool. The Reavers are pretty creepy. Yeah. Retheus, watch the movie Serenity, and it gives you the backstory of the Reapers. I don't know if you've ever seen Serenity before. It's a good movie, and it's a great capstone for the show. So let me say thanks to everybody. Thank you for being here first, everybody. If you are a subscriber, thank you for subscribing. If you have gifted a sub, like Kahini, thank you so much for gifting a sub. Let me remind everybody also that there are other ways to support the channel. You can see my link there to my Patreon page. If you would like to become a Patreon subscriber, you can do that for the same cost as a Twitch sub. And if you are interested in sending me some reading material, there we go. So we're going to go see Marcus over on his channel. When we get to his channel, yell adventure, and then throw some stuff in the chat. And I'll see everybody next time. Take it easy.